Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome to the May meeting, monthly meeting, regular meeting of the Howard Astronomical League. We're here at the Robinson Nature Center along with a big presence on Zoom. Thank you guys for coming physically. We have a pretty neat meeting, a special meeting today in honor or in celebration of the big eclipse that just happened. One of our former presidents, Jim Johnson, member extraordinaire, has put together a compilation of the club's experience during the eclipse. So that will be really fun, and we'll do that in a little bit. So, but first we'll go through some of our regular meeting things. And our agenda for tonight is introductions. I'll go through some announcements, including a new Seestar loaner program that we're starting. And then Jim will talk, and then we'll have our regular What's Out in the Sky, if there's time, because Jim has a lot of slides and its stuff is so cool. And then we have just a couple of Astro Images and sketches this month. So don't feel bad if you just didn't get in, because there's only a couple of slides with those things. Introductions. I see a couple of new faces in the room. We just heard from the Dalrymples. Would anybody like to introduce themselves, or any new members here, or our guests? It's okay if you're shy and you don't want to.
I'm John Harvey.
Hi, John. Welcome. Are you an amateur astronomer or
Closet amateur astronomer.
okay?
It's always got dark skies then.
Yeah, that's where a lot of my gear is. Yeah.
I have had a on again, off again 40-year or so acquaintanceship with a telescope and looking overhead.
Okay. Well, maybe this will be an opportunity to get on again. Yes, sir.
John Houdat, I'm Columbia.
Great. Welcome. First HAL meeting.
First HAL meeting.
Okay. Welcome. Yeah. And
I'm
Yes.
Sean Warren, I'm amateur astronomer, my first HAL meeting.
okay, great. Welcome very much. Welcome. Behind you?
Yeah, I'm also John, no, I'm just kidding. I'm actually, I went to a bunch of public star parties and then I wanted to join, so I joined a few months ago. This is my first meeting.
Okay, great. I hope you,
I'm Colbert, a former member, and hanging in there.
all right, great. Welcome. I hope you all enjoy your first meeting. And if you have suggestions on other things you'd like to see at the meeting, please come up and talk to me if we have any time at the end. Okay, so announcements. We have a star party coming up this weekend. This Saturday, of course it's clear tonight. Hopefully, the forecast isn't that great, but we'll keep. If one thing we have going for us is we're very hopeful. It's a hobby with people that have a lot of hope. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for Saturday. Rain or shine, we'll be there, and we can always socialize if.
One co-host, right now, it seems to change hourly, but right now, rain stopping at 2 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, so we may be able to hang out. Maybe it'll clear up.
I'll be out of town, so it'll be clear for sure.
Okay. Great.
Good job.
Thank you.
Upcoming events, the moon will be full very soon. And then we have to wait a couple of weeks for the new moon on June 6th, which is what I'm very excited about, being a deep sky guy. I'm always arranging my life around the new moon. My wife, I have her plan things. Don't plan things when there's a new moon. And there's also an interesting thing coming up, the June 4th. There's a 6-planet planetary alignment. If you're into waking up real early, there might be some very interesting things to see. Other recent events, we in terms of the public outreach that we do at HAL, Phil Whitebloom represented HAL at the Earth Day celebration at Clarksville Commons, which we do every year. Do you want to say anything real quick? Phil?
Yeah, so the event was not really well attended.
didn't do a good job of planning the date with the rest of the county because, there was the Main Street Festival. The same day, the same time, and it had thousands and thousands of people there, and so there was nobody up here at Clarksville Commons, but what was really interesting for the people that did come up is I had it all automated, the whole setup without, having to struggle with the public with the eyepiece and stuff like that, so I had the HAL scope on the screen, and I had the Seestar up doing the white light. So they were able, the people that did come by were able to very easily see what's going on. The sun was super active.
Yeah.
The only technical problem I had, which was a nature problem, was the wind was really strong and whipped right through there. It was, blew my top over, my canopy over, and I kept having to rescue the large display. But it was, so the technology worked good, and we'll try that again for other public events.
Can everybody hear, good, can everybody hear Phil okay when he was talking there online?
Yep, no problem.
Terrific. Okay, well, thanks, Phil, and thanks for representing HAL. Because of you, I went out and bought a bunch of HAL swag. And like
Awesome.
I bought the same HAL hat you're wearing, and it's great to see you wearing all that stuff. We had another event on May 3rd. One of our former presidents is an elementary school teacher, and he had his class come out and have a field trip day at the observatory on May 3rd. And our own Wayne Baggett gave a presentation. Wayne, do you want to say anything about this? Went to sleep. Are you there, Wayne? I thought I saw you. Wayne, you're muted if you're talking. Oh, your microphone has gone out. All right, well, we'll come back to you. All right, yeah, can you sign the event? Like what happened? Sure, do some charades and tell us about it.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, great.
Okay, so yeah, there were about 50 first graders and approximately 10 adults, chaperones and stuff. And the weather didn't cooperate too badly, but it was mostly cloudy. So we got a chance to open the dome. And for there were 3 groups. And so each group got to see the dome open, rotate, and point the telescope at the sun. I put the solar filter on and showed them the sun, and we talked about it. And I had built, you can see on the left-hand side of the big picture on the left, I built a little demonstration to illustrate how the moon phases are formed. And that seemed to work pretty well. Yeah, sitting on the table. Yeah. So yeah, it went pretty well. The kids seemed to have a good time. Some of the parents I don't know if they were other teachers or what, but some of the parents were really thrilled to see that Chris Miskowitz's name was on the plaques. So
Terrific. Terrific. Well, thanks for volunteering and being there.
you're welcome.
And we've had despite the weather, we've managed to have some people squeak in a few hours of viewing with some impromptus. We had a very successful April public star party. And then we had a couple of impromptus. Our members event hosted by me was rained out. But I still got to spend some time in the observatory training Chris Todd up on how to use the gear. So we were productive. And then this last week, we had a couple of people, Cheryl, call a impromptu that turned out to be a good night. So that was pretty good to see that. Okay, so now we've got a new thing in the club, and there's if I could speak really fast, I could do the thing at the end of this with Texas tags and titles not included, and so there's a lot of little red tape that we can talk about, and there's some online form that you have to sign and agree to. But the long and short of it is that I'm going to go over here so I can see what I'm saying. So we have a Seestar that the observatory, hi online, that the observatory, that the club bought, and we have it in the observatory. And so we're gonna make make it available to club members. And the process will be, for lack of a better, process or automated library checkout or anything like that, we've got an online sign-up sheet that was, thank you to Jim Tomney, who created this very slick interface and a connection to a shared Excel document with a list, a sign-up list. The idea is you put yourself on the list, and each month at this meeting, we will transfer the Seestar to whoever's at the top of the list. When you get it, you bring it back to the next meeting. If you have a problem with that, you can talk to the HAL Observatory Director. That's me. So we'll work out something, hopefully it won't turn into a big headache or nightmare. And this is our club. We'll all work it out. So you get it, you bring it back to the next meeting. And while you have it, you're responsible for it. You have to repair or reimburse if you damage it. And you'll have to do a little training, and we'll all help you figure out how to use it. I'll help you if you have problems while you're doing it. We'll give you a tutorial video and links to where you can learn how to do it. And when you take it, you'll use your own mobile device to connect to it. And so you can download all the pictures that you take to your own mobile device. And then, when you give it back, there won't be any pictures stored on it that you can keep. So you bring it back, we'll do a quick thing like you do when you return your rental car and make sure it's looking okay at the meeting. We'll take a quick look at it, give it to the next person. And it's kind of the honor system, and it's just a perk that we thought would be nice for the club. We'll give it a try, see how it works out. If it turns into problem or headache, we'll discontinue. But hopefully this will be something. It's only it's only gonna be 12 people or maybe less a year that get it. So it's not like this is a huge, everybody come in and take advantage. But so I will send a link after the meeting to the sign-up sheet, and then this will we'll all start this process. So hopefully it'll work out. And again, we'll just sort of see how it goes. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, Jim Johnson. Jim is glasses. Jim, I should have used the larger font. Jim is a past HAL president who is active in the club, and I'm very thankful for that. Under his leadership as president, the Watson scope was replaced with the Ellipse scope was installed. So the telescope you saw on the slide a couple of graphs ago of where Wayne was talking about inside the observatory, he had the solar filter on. That beautiful telescope was installed, and it made things a lot easier in terms of how we do outreach. So Jim spearheaded that effort. He's been the election committee chair for the last 6 years, and he is an avid deep sky, and he goes very deep, especially with his hyperbolic stretch lately. He is an avid photographer who likes camping and dark skies. So without further ado, I will turn over the floor to Jim. You want me to just flip for you?
I can flip.
Okay.
Just sit down and enjoy. Hello, everyone. I can't believe I'm here again. I did this after the 2017 eclipse, and I wanted to do it again. And A, it happened, and B, it's already here. So here we go. Uh-oh. I think COVID.
I can actually flip for you from over there.
Okay, if you can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck happened there. So here's what we're going to talk about tonight. I've got a little bit of an introduction to tell how the presentation structured, some context in which HAL participated in the eclipse. A little bit of talk about people, both us as HAL observers and the people that we encountered. how we planned for the eclipse, travel and imaging and things like that. The places we went to, the weather situations that we encountered, big story there. What we observed, what we didn't observe as well, and then a wrap up at the end. A little bit about this image, James Willingham, one of our ace photographers. This is actually a combination of two images, and I'd like to point out that at the bottom right, like at 4 o'clock, and almost completely up to that at 10 o'clock, are Bailey's beads. We put together an image of when the eclipse when totality started and right before it ended. And note that they're almost, the two Bailey's beads are almost 180 degrees apart. And that'll be important in another slide that we come to. Slide, please. For the purpose, we're going to summarize what we experienced, when we went out to see the eclipse on April the 8th. Got about an hour and 15 to do that. Victor's going to let me go over if I need to, but we'll try to be done in an hour and 15. Got contributions from about 50 members and guests. A variety of narratives, a lot of pictures, and a lot of video. About an hour of video. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Next, please. Notice the weather in this slide. Keep that in mind every time we look at a slide. Either look for the clouds in front of the illuminated part of the image or around the image if it's bright lit sky. So basically what I limited this presentation to is the input that I received from members and guests. I did receive more input after this present eclipse than I did in 2017, a lot more. So I had to be very selective to scale down to a 1-hour presentation. Dozens of stories are summarized. I included as many photos as I could. I tried to get at least one photo in from every person that sent multiple photos in. I did not include video. I didn't want to spend minutes watching video because we only have a limited amount of time. I do have a slide at the end that has links to online resources for selected videos, and if anybody has any more online resources that they want to point me to, I'll include those in the presentation before I send it to Ken to be uploaded. Next, please. Presentation format, it's going to be open discussion. If you have questions, throw a hand up. If you have something to add, if you see one of your pictures and want to add something, in various stages as we go through the presentation, definitely want to be very interactive. We have a lot of material to cover and many will have something to add. So when you do have comments, try to keep it brief as possible.
Hey, Wayne, I'm not in front of the computer and can't see online. If you see will you speak up, please? If somebody raises their hand online.
Okay.
Thanks.
Next, please. So a little bit of context. Next slide. I already said, look for the clouds, whether it's in any illuminated part of the disk. Next, please. All right, Wayne sent in something from the same source after the last one. This one is just as cool. It's basically how the eclipse looks at depending upon where you are in the path. If you're in the partial eclipse zone on either side of the totality path, the coolness is going to be way down. But once you get inside that path of totality, the coolness goes way up and way fast. And the caption that goes along with this when you mouse over it is a partial eclipse is like a cool sunset. A total eclipse is like someone broke the sky. And anybody that saw it can probably attest to that. Thanks, Wayne. Next, please. So this is the second total eclipse in the continental United States, U.S. mainland since 1979. The first one was after 79 was in 2017. The path of totality was Mexico, the United States, and Canada. the three primary North American countries, and that's why it's called the Great North American Total Solar Eclipse. About 12 million people in the path of totality, 2 to 7 million expected to travel to the path. Heavy expectations of heavy traffic were reported in the press. I even saw where some jurisdictions were making emergency declarations. Next, please. Few headlines that I selected, Procrastinator's Guide to Viewing the Solar Eclipse in 2017. I still haven't gotten around to reading that. Maybe before 2044, I don't know. Consumer alert, will you be able to use your cell phone in the midst of the eclipse? I didn't see any reports this time of cell phone outages, but I did experience it in 2017. Solar eclipse emergency. Texas County braces for fuel shortages amid massive crowds. They had massive crowds down there. So they declared an emergency. Comets, planets, and stars might be visible. We kind of knew that. I think Jim Tomley talked about it the month before the eclipse, and I certainly talked about it as well. Southwest Airlines offering a unique experience to see the 2024 total solar eclipse. Keep that in mind. That sparked a thought that I'll bring up a little bit later. Solar eclipse weather forecast. AccuWeather provides first cloud outlook, and that was on March the 7th. What are they trying to do here? I'll show you that weather forecast or that cloud forecast compared to what we actually got. Tahoe snow totals have already eclipsed 7 feet. More than one kind of eclipse going on at one time. And a warning to stock up on water and fuel ahead of the eclipse, emergency officials warned. And I saw one instance of a fuel outage at one gas station, so it wasn't widespread. Next, please. So the people that were involved, let's go through that. So there were many favorable descriptions of interactions with other viewers, and please don't forget to raise your hand and throw something in there. We met people from many other countries and states. Two people met Brave Falls, discoverer of nebulae and astrophotography social media personality. He was actually published in the June Sky and Telescope. Some viewed the eclipse among large crowds. 400 to 500 people was not uncommon. And one report of 30,000 plus in a crowd.
Yeah,
Where was that?
I was in the.
Paris, Texas.
Yeah, in Canada, on the line, there's a football stadium, and it had 18,000 people.
Okay.
And then Indianapolis Speedway.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything but Indianapolis.
And the Cleveland Indians.
No, wait, so was there. You were
I was
there.
there, but I wasn't at Speedway, so I don't know.
I was in Indianapolis, but not at the Speedway also.
Okay.
In fact, my cousin, who I went to visit there, talked me out of the Speedway in favor of Butler University. And it was a good choice.
And there were a few cases of our groups and families traveling together that had little or no interaction with others, like this isolated campsites. Next slide, please. So here's photos of some eclipse. Yeah.
Oh, you
viewers.
Yeah.
So when that one up in the upper left there, that one up in the upper left there was, that's me on the big binocular, and that's my H alpha scope on the right part, and with the holding the sunocular up there, that was one of our hosts. We and then down there in the bottom left also. So we were chasing clear skies, and we were pulling a camper, and
Can you hold that part of the story for a
yeah,
little?
yeah, I will. So
Okay.
anyway, so that was us anyways. We were up in Canada.
Yeah.
And we'll hold the story. You got it in there. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had.
I'm the guy in the middle on the top.
Okay,
That's
and
great.
Scott and Dana, that's you
Yeah,
guys
that's
up
us
there?
over
Yeah,
there.
I was just gonna say real quick, when, in 2017, we went down to Sweetwater, Tennessee, which that town rolled out the red carpet for us. They were giving out the glasses, they were giving out waters and snacks and you name it. And it was huge. I mean, the roads were closed. It was just chairs everywhere the people had brought to watch. And then this year we went to my cousin's place in Springfield, Ohio, and it was just the family. And it was just very different experience, experiencing it with a whole bunch of people and experiencing with just a few people. And I'm glad I've done it both ways.
Nice. Leona Illig, one of the donors of the Illig telescope.
Mhm.
And there's me sitting over there looking like I know what I'm doing. Good. Just for Ruth. One of your images from Canada, right?
Yeah.
Next, please. Eye safety, we talked about that, before.
Hang on, I just see that Chris Todd has his hand up.
Go ahead, Chris.
Unmute.
No, I was merely applauding those
Oh,
awesome
God.
pictures.
Oh.
That's all.
I
Did
apologize.
I raise my
apologize.
hand by accident?
I need to make a shout out to Chris. He got me interested in the Eclipse presentations when he presented in like 2014 or 2015. Well before I was even on the board, and so I've done several presentations leading up to this one, but Chris Todd got me started here. Thanks.
Chris is
You're quite welcome, and I am glad to have gotten more than a few people hooked on the idea of viewing eclipses, because that XKCD, like, yeah, there is nothing that matches being under the shadow of the moon. It's crazy.
another former HAL president, Chris Todd.
So we talked, so every time we present about the eclipse, Jim Tomley talked about it when he presented the month before. We emphasized eye safety and when you can, when you have to look with filtration, when you can look without it. And the good news is we had no reported eye injuries, so glad to hear that. Next slide, please. Eclipse shades was a great source of anxiety in 2017. There was a big change in the standard that needed to be on them. And this caused some last minute rushes to get eclipse glasses. I don't know of anybody that didn't. It was less of an issue this time around. And like last time, I've seen email efforts in the HAL, Howard Astro group that you can turn in your shades to be donated. So consider that. Next slide, please. Solar eclipse planning. Let's see what we got there. Next slide. So we spent a lot of time planning for the eclipse. Those that travel to get to a site to see the eclipse. Some of the sites were picked based on travel and weather contingencies, or contingencies. Just looking at the climatology and trying to figure out where's the best place to go to have a more likely chance of seeing clear skies. And that pick was generally Texas, and that didn't work out nearly as well. The place that looked based on climatology to be the least attractive were up through Ohio in the Northeast, and some of those places turned out to be the best. We'll see a map of that. And some other travel destination considerations were locations of friends and family and concurrent with other travel. Other things that were planned were photography, equipment, techniques, and what's going to be image, whether it's going to be totality, trailing speeds, partial phases with montages, all kind of images that you'll see. Some anticipated loss of connectivity. They traveled with a atlas and with the path of totality in their vicinity annotated. Others downloaded Google map data onto their phone in case there was phone outages. Lots of detailed planning lists were mentioned, checklists for imaging. And some even packed camping gear in case they had to take off to get the better weather and got stuck in traffic or couldn't get back to their jumping off point. So I've already said more member and guest input this time than in 2017, probably more Eclipse travelers as well.
The club is twice as
What's that?
big. And the club is twice as big.
The club is, yeah, that's true as well. Next, please. Travel plan configurations. Most of them fill into one of these 5 categories. So some elected to stay where they were in Maryland and view the partial eclipse from there. Some travel directly to and from their viewing location. Others travel to a jumping off point and then on to a viewing location on eclipse day, with a reverse for the homeward trip. Some plan to move along the eclipse path to better weather if needed. Like if you were in Dayton, Ohio, and the weather looked better in Indianapolis, then you get up that morning, you move west, or you go east toward Cleveland. Some plan to remain at the chosen eclipse viewing location no matter what the weather. But we'll see how that turned out. Next slide, please. Viewing methods and aids. Maybe some people start jumping in with some things that aren't not up here. A lot of eclipse classes, unaided eye, from assortment of telescopes with eyepiece views, live laptop cameras. They had several Seestar devices. Definitely something new there. Binoculars, some successful with pinhole cameras, some not so successful. One person used a C14 finder scope. Saw a few colanders and eclipse timer smartphone apps. That was something new. Anybody have any experience with that? With it, Dana, with that, with the times?
It helped a lot. It didn't quite help me on the exit, but beforehand and informing my family, because we were all together and taking on and off, getting the glasses. Of course, you didn't need to tell anybody. I still have my glasses on. I'm like, my sister's like, take your glasses off. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I missed like 30 seconds. Probably wasn't that long, but the time I liked having that app. It helped.
Anybody else with the app? Yeah.
I'm just curious what the wisdom of the group was on the projection, which is the brain that I used. And it's the question that John and I were just talking, but I think he was going to ask this, but I'm going to beat him to it. When you are at totality, is there enough earth flow on the lunar surface that you can see the?
That's a good question, and it never was asked before the eclipse, and I could have told you there's not enough light off the eclipse to see anything in the projection at totality. Anybody have a different opinion on it?
So you see, so basically you would see the absence of the light.
You wouldn't see anything. I don't think you'd see anything.
Oh, but it's not absolutely dark because we don't live in an absolutely dark area.
Right.
Just in the video of it, you would see your crescent getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and your crescent go away.
Yeah.
And then at the totality, your crescent starts.
So that's something that happens with my hydrogen alpha telescope,
Okay.
and I had that. I've got that video. It's just not in here.
So,
All right.
yeah, hydrogen alpha, there's nothing to see.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
So-
You guys are doing
I
good.
took that
Move along.
I mean, yeah, that means there's not enough light from the corona,
Right.
even though has a fair amount of brightness to it.
If I recall correctly, the corona is about 1,000 times dimmer than the photosphere, that last little sliver of the
Yeah.
photosphere that you see.
But it's supposed to be as bright as a full moon, isn't it? But it's spread out.
I've heard that, and I'm not sure exactly how that relates. I think it's spread over a larger area, but I'm not sure. It's pretty bright compared to the sky.
I did happen to see a couple of days ago, somewhere online, I can't remember where, a demonstration of photograph of the total eclipse showing Earth shine on the moon.
Yes,
It washed out, the corona was just completely whited out.
yeah, so you just go longer exposures and you
Yeah.
can see the earth shine on the moon. But the corona will be washed out usually. Now, some people have done, like Ken in 2017 did a high dynamic range image. And I believe he got both the earth shine and the extended corona, right?
Yeah, you can see the earth shine in anything more than a second exposure, a second long exposure.
Okay, next, anything else on? Next slide. So there's some of the methods. There's James Willingham with dozens and dozens of scopes. Here's Phil at the binoculars again. Ron Ferris, are you on? Are you online? Can you talk about the sun funnel? Anybody know about the sun funnel? I'm not sure exactly what that was. It looks like some kind of projection device, but I'm not sure what.
Well, it might be a funnel with a tissue paper and it's the whole of the funnel.
There's-
pointed at the sun.
Well,
Well,
no,
but it's
no,
but it's on a telescope.
it's eyepiece projection going into a
Yeah.
funnel. And you put a variety of means to project it on. You can use vellum paper, you can use a latex balloon surface, you can use a shower, is that white vinyl from a shower? Number of techniques. Frosted glass works pretty good.
I don't see any sunspots. I'd like to see sunspots. But yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, next slide. In the days prior to the eclipse, what did we do? We traveled to our destinations or jumping off points. Some people set up camp, others set up equipment and practice imaging. A lot of anguish over what the weather was going to do in those last days and hours.
And that's movie, Texas to Plattsburgh.
Yeah. Sorry, Dana, go ahead.
The Texas to Plattsburgh, that was ambitious.
Huge. That was the flown.
That was me.
That was good.
Yeah.
Did you fly or drive?
I did not drive from Texas to.
That's what I was gonna say, you had to
I
flown.
changed from going to Texas to Cuba.
Oh, okay.
Good call.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a lot of changes due to the weather. The climatology didn't hold up to what people expected. You can see several of those are from Texas, 1, 2, 3, 4. Are from Texas. A couple moved from Vermont, places in Vermont further east.
And some will end up in Canada.
And some moved to Canada on the fly. So we'll get to that story in just a minute. All right, next slide. So locations, where did we view from and what kind of places? Next slide. Back up. Back up. Right there. Let's see, some people reported setting out to get to the center line without having selected a specific destination. Others had very specific destinations in mind, like knew what hotel and what parking spot on the ground that they were going to observe from. In either case, there were a variety of viewing settings: hotel, malls, mall, shopping center, and other parking lots, public and community parks, public schools. Some states they were open, some states they were closed. One report of school buses blocking an entrance or the entrance. Who said?
Man, I'm just surprised that they did that.
Organized events with parking, restrooms, some included entertainment, campgrounds, patio and hammocks. That's Scott and Dana there. A gas station, homes and houses with relatives, lake cottage, small farm, and there was one report of a civic center. Next slide. And there's some more people viewing the eclipse. We have eclipse viewers at HAL. Victor opened up that day. I think Ken was out there. Who else was there?
There's Ken right there.
First Ken.
That's too funny. So I'm looking at these pictures. I have to say, I recognize the telescope and not my cousin.
There's Texas, there's Phil at the binoculars again in Canada. There's a campground in Western Ohio. Next, please. We were spread out all over the place. We had Dale Gint was probably the first to see totality down in Mexico. Others were spread out across every US state except for, didn't catch anybody in Ohio, New Hampshire. There was some clumpiness in Texas and Ohio and Vermont. I'll show you the map in a minute. Two groups observed from Quebec, Canada, and Phil will tell you that story in just a moment. George O was in Fulton, Maine, that's right before the eclipse left the United States and back into Canada. Next slide. So, and there's where we were based upon the input that I got before the eclipse. I didn't try to redo the map after everybody started changing, but it looks like we're pretty good at plotting eclipse paths. You can tell where the eclipse was just by where we were.
So for a few people in the DC area.
Except for those idiots.
Was it clear in Mexico when he?
I did not get a report from Dale, so but I would imagine it was. It almost always is. Richard, you said something?
Oh, I said, except for the idiots in Washington. Along the totality.
All right, next slide, please. The traffic and mobility is coming up, Phil. Now, some people left to head to their destinations a couple days early to beat the traffic. One report of heavy traffic on the New Jersey Turnpike before the eclipse. Canton, Ohio, a BP station ran out of gas. Compared to, probably should have put the map on here. Compared to 2017, widespread post-eclipse jams did not happen. I remember I did a screen capture of, and you could just look at where the red was on the map from Oregon all the way down to South Carolina and see where people were trying to get home from the eclipse. And about 3 times the travel distance, if you were operating from the jumping off point in 2017, about 3 times the time that it took to get to the eclipse viewing location, 3 times that to get back. And there were some reports of that again this time. Most travelers did not report delays, but some did. The comments was an epic jam on I-87, probably more than one report of that. 3-hour drive from Boston to Orleans, Vermont turned into 10 hours. So there's your 3 to 1. I-95 southbound out of Maine was brutal.
Yes, it was.
Who said that?
I was in it.
You was in that. 3.5 hours from Western Massachusetts to 9.5 hours back. There's 3 to 1 again. Southbound traffic from Central PA down into Maryland was slightly heavier than normal. Next slide. All right, Phil.
Okay, so before we go here, did you put anything in here in the presentation on communications during the eclipse? Did you have any?
Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously not, because you would have said, yes, I do.
Yeah.
So during the eclipse, so we've got a group of us that have been getting together for breakfast every Saturday morning for 20 years from this club. And so we're all in a fam bam kind of group and texting. So, but we were spread out through here. So as the eclipse was traveling, and I was the furthest northeast, so I was hearing everybody was texting and texting and texting with what was going on and set up. It was like nonstop. It was right. I mean, it was like crazy with how much information it was. But as soon as it got into total, it just went radio quiet. Not because of cell stuff, because everybody was so focused. And then when it was over, it kind of blew up again. And but I could see it coming up. But I'm gonna keep the story short because it's a really long story, but I was. In the 2017, I had a plan and it was all set up and I stayed in my sister's house and was gonna go, and it turned out there was like the biggest thunderstorm ever. And it was like expecting a tornado, so jumped up and I had to drive like crazy to outrun the storm, and then ended up going way back east and ending up in Boonville, Missouri, so thought that would never happen again. Well, so the original plan was I was gonna get up early in the morning on the day of the eclipse, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and drive to Cleveland. And then just set up anywhere, as long as I'm on the center line. And that changed when Stan and Joanne Shapiro said, come on, Phil, we'll go with you wherever you want to do. We have a camper. So instead of leaving day of, we left on Saturday, and we had the weather map open and stuff. The original plan was to go to Cleveland. Weather wasn't looking so good, so I said, well, maybe then we're going to try and meet up with Jim. And then that weather was deteriorating where he was on the Indiana-Ohio border. So started looking further north. I was looking at New Hampshire and Vermont, so we started going up, and everywhere we were headed, the weather was, it was like chasing us. We were in thick clouds the entire way. I got to tell you, the snow in the mountains in Vermont was beautiful, it was magnificent. So we ended up spending a night in Vermont it's a ski area up there, and ski season was over, so it was just kind of, we parked the camper and then there, and looking at the weather map all night and everything else, deciding where we're going to go. And it was looking pretty good on the western edge of Maine. So I'm really shortening the story up, but we're driving and everything is, fortunately, we're pulling a bathroom with us, right? So we have a bathroom in the campus, so that was really a big deal. You'd have to go looking for places. And we had food. So we're driving through, and Apple Maps is telling us to go way east to come all the way back through, and Google Maps is going straight through. I said, well, and he said, well, why don't we come using an extra hour or whatever? Why don't we just go straight through? Didn't look to see where we were going. Just before we left my house, when they picked me up at my house, when we loaded all the telescope gear and stuff, and when Joanne and Stan picked me up, I said, you know, maybe I'll grab my passport. And it was fortuitous, and it was like crazy because I didn't even thought about it before. So I ran back in the house, and we were getting ready to leave. I ran in the house, and they had their passports with them anyways, and they had a new passport card. It's pretty cool for another meeting. But anyways, so we get that going, and then the reason it was shorter, and the reason Apple Maps was trying to go is because to get to Western Maine, you had to go through Canada. So all of a sudden, here comes the border crossing. And you had no idea, because nobody looked at the map to see where it was taking us. We were just going to Maine. And where it was supposed to be clear for 2.5 days. So that was a guarantee. I mean, it was literally, and it proved that way too for the winners, but it was a guaranteed clear spot. So we go through, as we're going through customs in Canada, all of a sudden hear this huge grinding coming out of the trailer, pulling it on the camper. And we drove with that for a while, and we pulled up into a little gas station in a small lumber town in Quebec, Canada, called Ayers Cliff, and we got out, the entire wheel and the thing was completely shattered and it had damaged the axle. And it's Sunday in Quebec, Canada, and everything is closed except for the gas station and a couple of restaurants. The people there were as nice as you will meet anywhere on the planet, and they came up and they were all helpful, and they said, yeah, and the owner of the gas station comes, he was just repping the hockey, but never left. So he said, you could spend the night here, you know, no problem there. And they took us over to the owner of a shop who turned out he had all the parts to repair this thing during the eclipse. But it turned out the guy that came and was just talking to us, he said, you could use my land. He had 200 acres of land. We broke down on the center line. No, when I tell you, the center line is, let's say it's this thick. We were on the center of the center line. I mean, dead on the center of the center line. It was unbelievable. And then he said, yeah, come up. We had no trees. We were up on a hill, and there was 3 of us, well, there was myself, Joanne, and Stan, and my Seestar. So it was tied to my network at home, and I couldn't untie it because it needed a firmware update. I called Richard at home, and he was trying to talk me through this thing, but we couldn't undo it. So that was the only technology that failed. But so it was really a really unbelievable trip. And it was always, the whole thing was to make sure we were out of line. And it said that there wasn't going to be any clouds until 4 o'clock, and the eclipse was scheduled to end just after 3:30 p.m. there. And at 4 o'clock, thin clouds started rolling in. But what was really interesting during the eclipse, the experience was the wind, we were out in you saw the field, we had 200 acres of land there. By the way, he also owned the land that the car repair shop was on. And it was like incredible how, it was like, it's like a story,
The Twilight Zone.
but the wind was strong and there was snow on the ground. And the wind was strong, and the eclipse came. As soon as it went total, no wind. Totally went from strong wind to no wind. And it was no wind for like the entire 3 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever we had in totality. It was a nice long totality compared to 2017, full minute longer. And then as soon as the sun came creeping back out, the wind picked right back up. It was incredible. That was totally unexpected. Like, I had no idea. And that's the end of the story. And then we got stuck in traffic coming home and we drove all night and come through Canada and stuff. It was backed up because so many people were in there, but who would have thought, right? So that's the story.
So Bill had the best story from 2 eclipses.
Yeah. The previous one's a story for another day.
This story eclipsed your previous one.
A better view because I never got out of the total cloud in the last one. This one, the clear, perfectly clear stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
next slide, please. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about weather a little bit. Well, this was, I think, the biggest source of anxiety. We saw people making big moves, little moves, wondering whether they were going to get to see the eclipse at all or not. I already mentioned climatology was a big influence in how people selected sites, and it really didn't work out that way. Some travel plans did not include weather backup considerations. But I think that comment for a little bit later, but there was a lot of anxiety over the weather, much especially on the Howard Astro email group. Next slide. The last few days forecast, there were all kind of weather models out there and they were showing different things and people were, you know, is this the worst case or is this what they actually expect to happen? You know, those kinds of things. You know, again, people making the large changes. On eclipse morning, some people elected to move, get some better weather. But others made small changes. Some stayed in place regardless of the weather. I think that nobody was completely clouded out. I think everybody got at least a glimpse of totality. Is there anybody that got completely clouded out? Anybody online? No?
I didn't get to, I was out of the country, so I was watching it from NASA's feed online, so I got to see it from telescopes and commentary all along the passageway, all along the center line. So that's 7 or 8 different points. But I also tapped into a Texas TV station that had live remotes and 2 observers that were 10 miles apart. One of them is going absolutely, oh my God, and the other one is cussing. Saying, oh, well, yeah, like that. And they were literally, they were 10 miles apart.
Wow.
A lot of places had high thin clouds. That's what I experienced, and I don't think it detracted from the eclipse's experience. Some places with sketchy forecasts turned out to be okay, but I don't think anybody completely got clouded out. Next slide, please. So this is the that March the 7th forecast, and I tell you, I'd take that. You know, nice and green down here in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, it gets yellow. Let's get back up here where several of us were through Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Green again, and then it looks pretty bad going up into the Northeast. But let's go ahead one more slide. And it looks like the weather knew where the eclipse was going. Look at that, right through the yellow there.
Yeah. All the way
Down here in South Texas, San Antonio, Austin, not so good, really good up, kind of good to really good up in the northeast. So maybe the weather service is as good as HAL at plotting the totality path. I don't know. Next slide. Eclipse observations and reactions. What did we see? So I wanted to put this up here first. There was some discussion in the news about be able to see perhaps some stars. I didn't see any stars. I don't think anybody mentioned seeing any. Jupiter and Venus, there were a lot of mentions of that. The comet was reported in the news. I don't think anybody saw the comet. Did anybody see the comet?
There was at least one photo that had the comment. Was that on the Discord?
We saw it from where I was.
You saw the comet?
Yeah,
Okay,
Where was that?
Avon, Ohio,
Oh.
right on Lake Erie.
okay.
Yeah, we got stars up
Oh,
Canada.
you're Cleveland.
Yeah, you saw stars.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I think the reason why we didn't see stars is,
I had a friend who
I
sent me
can
a picture.
tell.
They were in Cleveland. They got shot at.
Right, next slide.
it was just, it was so tiny, it was a little fuzzy thing.
Okay. The things that were mentioned being seen before totality, some people saw the moon's shadow, approaching, especially with our high thin clouds. I saw that as well. I mean, you could clearly see the roundness of the shadow and you could see it moving toward you. Crescent projections on the ground, like colanders and big leaves and trees. Shadows getting sharper, were reported. Light turning silvery or silver green. Some saw Venus before totality, and many noticed the cooling effect, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Next slide. Things that we observed during totality. Bailey's beads was a big one. Bailey's beads / the diamond ring, closely related. Corona and prominences, cooling effect. Many said it was greater than 2017, and again, more on that. Many saw Venus and Jupiter. With mentions of crowd reactions and animal behaviors. A lot of mentions of the 360-degree sunset effect. I can say where I was with the high clouds, where it seemed to be amplified more than what I saw in 2017. Some mentioned a rainbow-like ring in the clouds. Some saw shadow bands. Darkness, but not as dark as a moonlit night is what was one report, and someone saw streetlights come.
It's not a bad, it's not a couple bats, actually.
What's that?
I saw some bats,
You saw bats.
yeah.
Wow.
I was like, that's cool.
Anything else?
I saw, the night birds came out and the crickets were chirping and there was a rooster crowing and an owl hooting.
Confused a lot of it.
The light was, I don't know whose quote this is, but one of us, the light was not dusk nor dawn, but something else. Next, please.
I was gonna say,
Jim, you want to talk about this?
I was gonna say real quick, it used to confuse humans too. There was some war, I don't remember what it was, that was going on during a total solar eclipse, and they thought it was the gods telling them to stop fighting. I wish I could remember what war that was. I don't remember what war it was, but it confuses humans as well at times.
Jim, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I just bought a real inexpensive monitor for temperatures, and I set it in the shadow by the car and just let it run. And then when I got back home, pulled the data off of it, and it was really kind of interesting, really good dip here, and it actually stayed cooler. And, you know, after the eclipse, after totality, it actually continued to drop a little bit before it began to climb back up. And I saw one other set of data taken from Uvalde, Texas, same sort of thing. It kind of, after the eclipse, it still continued downward before it headed back up.
Thank you. Next slide.
Actually, before we switch, seeing this graph just made me realize, or think of a friend of mine who lives in Phoenix, who has a solar installation on his roof.
Photovoltaic.
The photovoltaic
Yeah.
solar panel set up on his roof, and he monitors it with his little app. He sent me a screen grab of his app that showed, I mean, he wasn't in totality, but he was, I don't know what percentage he had there. But he sent me, I meant to send that to you and I totally forgot. He had a little dip where when the eclipse happened, you could see over a few hours that he wasn't producing as much electricity.
I can show you what that looks like if you want to see it.
Cast it
That's,
to the screen.
that's a 25-degree drop there.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
For us, I would
We
think it
know
was more like
that.
6, it was like.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, but in Canada, you know, like I said, there was already snow on the ground. And when that temperature came, it got cold.
Mhm.
Joanne was surprised.
Okay.
All right, next. So the things we didn't observe, things that we looked for but didn't see, nobody saw Mercury, Saturn, or Mars. So I just heard that some saw stars, but there were people that looked for stars that didn't see them. People that looked for the comet and didn't see it. People that looked for shadow bands didn't see them. Some looked for the moon's shadow approaching or retreating and didn't see it. Some mentioned forgetting to look for prominences and shadow bands. And I heard the same thing at the last eclipse. Of course, I forgot to look. I just lost my mind. Next slide. Anything about what we observed or didn't?
Well, I'll tell you during the, with the HAL scope, you're not gonna see anything when the eclipse is there. But somewhere down the road, when I processed this almost 3 hours of video that I took during the eclipse, what you see is the sun was so active with so many prominences and filaments and everything else going on is that it came across. It was kind of exciting to watch it after. I didn't pay attention to it during the eclipse because I was just observing because it was all running automatically. But when I watch the video back, it's so cool to start watching all those features disappear and reappear. I mean, it was something you just don't see like that.
And you know that they were called filaments even
I
before
said-
you started observing, right?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, you're right.
Up in Plattsburgh, there was a guy, Whitney, who actually had a drone, and he sent it up ahead of time and captured some interesting images, a little video of the shadow approaching. It was really cool. He said he would send it to me, he never did.
Yeah.
Such is life.
I changed the spelling, the PHI.
So reactions, what doesn't that picture say at all? That's on our own Ernie Wright's daughter at Paris, Texas. So the gasps, cheers, applause, all amazement and elation were all mentioned. The animals, birds went wild with calls, and some said the birds got quiet. Roosters crowing, crickets chirping, anxious dog. I suppose we could add the owl to that and other things. One person mentioned that it was a lifelong ambition as much as what I do today is bucket list. And I get that.
Yeah.
Anything else from reaction? Yes.
I have one to add. After the eclipse, when the sun came back up, I got a kiss on the cheek from my wife.
Oh.
Every eclipse, he's had 3 since 1979. In 24 years.
Next slide, please.
Interesting story about the helicopter on. Helicopter was.
I saw the helicopter, I know what that was about.
Probably part of, yeah.
Oh,
It's on a pedestal back there.
Oh, yeah.
I looked at it, I think it's an Army AH-1J, AH-1G.
I think it was,
What's that?
I think it was operating, or you think it was just,
Oh, no, it's on a
Not a pedestal.
Static.
okay.
Oh, so some feeble attempts to describe the eclipse experience in words, and some of these inadequate words were breathtaking, absolutely stunning, breathtakingly stunning. Words fail to convey. No images I seen match the actual view. Right. No pictures come within a mile. The camera cannot capture what the eye perceives. Those are all something that I could try myself, but I'm not. There's just no words to described it in the bullet from Wayne's, the graphic that Wayne sent in. It's like a cool sunset, but a total eclipse is like someone broke the sky. Next, please. This is an interesting observation, Steve Villanelle from Bluffdale, Texas. I thought he was down in the southern, around San Antonio, Austin, so I'm surprised that he got that much of a view. But remember the first image I showed him when we started the presentation where the two Bailey's beads were 180 degrees apart? That person was on or near, very near the center line. Steve reported viewing. Steve, are you online? Steve reported viewing nearer the edge of the path of totality, and he only saw like a minute and a half of totality. But notice where the ingress Bailey's beads is versus the egress, and it's closer to the edge of totality, the path, away from the outer edge of it. The closer those two things are going to be to one another until they disappear, and now all you see is partial and misses as good as a mile. Next slide, please.
You mean right here, and right here?
Giant promise.
Is that what you're referring to?
No.
No.
Bailey's beads, that's the ingress. Bailey's beads, that's the egress. The C2 and C3.
I see.
Yeah, just inside the edge, you get to see a longer length of time deeper into the corona.
Right, so center line is going to be the maximum duration of eclipse. And the outer edges are going to be the minimum.
Yeah, minimum duration of eclipse, but maximum duration of getting to see deep into the corona. In other words, because the moon is just grazing that edge of the sun for a longer time.
You back up one.
You get the egress and the outgress
And so
back
that's
to
why
back,
some people go
Right.
toward the,
basically.
Okay,
toward the edge.
I see what you're saying. Very interesting. So would you be observing the corona on the away from the Bailey's bead, or are you going to be observing up in that
Up in where the
up there? Okay.
Because that's where the moon is just barely covering the photosphere
Okay, that makes sense.
and it's sliding sideways across that
Mhm.
tangency point.
So that's very close to the edge, completely different experience. I've never considered that till I saw the picture.
Yeah, you give up more length of totality, of
Yeah.
course.
Next slide.
Doesn't appeal to me, but.
Mhm.
So observations and actions after totality, moon shadow retreating, already mentioned that, especially where it's high thin clouds. Some people observed all the way to C4, like Phil was talking about, 3:30 where he was, until it was completely over. One person reported seeing the waxing crescent moon while they were driving home. It's about 28 3/4 hours old. Ken saw the Key Bridge disaster when he was flying back into Baltimore. That's seriously 2 weeks after it happened. And one person would sip celebratory weeded bourbon.
Shouldn't you been sipping moonshine? I don't understand the weeded bourbon. What's a weeded bourbon?
I don't know what we do.
I don't know. It seems like moonshine would be the drink of choice.
Try it. I don't know what that is.
All right, we'll try and report back.
Jim
What's
doesn't know
imaging?
about sipping.
What's that?
You don't know anything about sipping, it's just science.
Imaging, very interesting topic when it comes to eclipses. You're going to see we've already seen a couple of incredible images, and you're going to see some more. And one of the things that I suggested in my briefs leading up to this is that unless you really know what you're doing, I'll leave it to the experts. So some gave it a try with the caveat that it would not compromise their eclipse experience. Some did it with, we saw James Willingham with multiple scopes and cameras. He has like a yard full there. So a lot of Seestars, I think those were probably pretty easy to manage. There were no instances of, anybody missing totality due to imaging issues.
No reported instances.
No reported instances. Yeah. There was one case, okay, I'll fess up, it was me. I didn't get an image because something unexpected happened and I just said, that's it.
I'm watching.
I'm watching, yeah.
Mhm.
So I abandoned it. I'm very happy with that move. Some people elected to image or not to image at all versus risking any missing any of the eclipse. Jim, do you want to talk about that topic again?
Well, I did do imaging,
Yeah.
so I didn't forego it, but the comment at the bottom there,
Yeah.
yeah, basically, Murphy's Law prevailed to a degree, and like you, it's kind of like, I was just like, okay, well, we're just not gonna do this. In 2017, I was basically having to manually fire off looking at a tablet, so I was like looking at the eclipse more on my tablet than looking up, and I was like, we're not doing that this time. So I used software SCTNC, I think, and I just basically turned it over to that. I was like, whatever you do,
Yeah.
you do great. It screwed up. It only took JPEGs instead of raw images, and there were some other glitches with it, but I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
Because I was really much more
Yeah.
in the moment with watching the eclipse.
Next slide. All right, here comes the eye candy. Next slide. Yeah, let's think like salvage now.
No, another way, below it.
It says 25%.
Yeah,
It was on PowerPoint mode, let's turn it off all the way on the very bottom.
on the bottom,
What do I hit?
that one, you right there.
Movie?
No, what above it?
PowerPoint is. We did.
Oh, I long for the day of tomorrow.
What was movie? All right. All right, so the progression here is going to be, I started with the ones that were the least amount of moon covering the sun to the more all the way up to totality, and then the ones where large sky and multiple images of the sun and moon in one photo. You can see in this one, clouds. This was taken from Maryland. Nice image there.
Have we, I just wanted to offer, I took a set of time series exposures for the entire sequence. And I've been busy post-processing them because initially I didn't realize the geometry of taking a picture that wasn't 90 degrees to the point of projection induced the need for corrective warping.
Yeah.
So I've had to rewarp all of
Interesting.
quite a bit of the 480 images.
Wow.
But it's very interesting to me that you can determine exactly when you see any of these pictures, you can see exactly what time they're on.
Leona, are you on? Do you have any comments? Next slide. This looks like hydrogen alpha. Very cool. Lee, are you on? Any comments? Next. Very similar to the one before. Brad, are you on? Next slide. And any questions or comments, we can put them in here. I'd like to talk about this one a little bit. You see some, an aircraft
Yeah.
contrail in there.
I remember that aircraft.
So we saw in the news headlines where airlines were offering flights that were chasing the eclipse. Wonder if we're gonna see more of that, and then as a result of that, see more contrails like this in eclipse images going forward. A little bit of clouds here. Richard, you want to talk about that?
Well,
It's a neat
nice
image.
and cloudy.
Nice and cloudy.
Yeah, I was familiar.
Yeah. I can't imagine that.
Next. That's the one, Doug Bernanke and I did get one image before totality. I posted that. Nothing to jump up and down about next. Rich, are you on? Want to talk about this? No. Next slide. Thomas? We can hear from Maryland. Cloudy, obviously. That's what. Cool.
Yeah, the clouds make.
It does.
For that.
For that area, yeah.
Next. Hydrogen alpha.
Wow. That is really cool.
That A-frame prominence is showing right there.
Yeah.
Like it's hanging in the air.
That's the big spot.
So probably pretty close to maximum.
Yeah.
Partiality from here.
Can someone refresh me what we're actually looking at here?
Okay, Bill, you want to talk about that? Hydrogen alpha
So
imaging?
it's an H alpha, you're looking at the chromosphere of the sun as opposed to the photosphere, which you look at with the sunspots and the white light. And what you see there is what's called a prominence. The A-shaped one, which is basically a result of a storm. It's a magnetic field where there's ionized plasma attached to that magnetic field. And that thing could be much larger than it appears because that could be sticking out from the far side of the sun at this point.
Yeah.
It's just not off the edge. It just appears to be off the edge, but it could be way bigger from behind. And to give you a size of that scale, that probably from the edge to the tip is probably somewhere around 40,000, 50,000 miles.
Holy moly.
So because the sun's so big, everything looks so small, but that's a pretty large.
So this is electromagnetic radiation.
No, it's actually a magnetic field with plasma.
No, the whole reason I'm seeing some bright yellow regions, what?
That's just the brightness of the sun, so.
So that's electromagnetic radiation.
Right.
Well, it's just the way the sensor works on the camera, the sun, you always get these hot spots. And when you post-processing, you're always trying to work the.
It's a good filter.
It's
Yeah,
nice-
well, it's an H alpha scope, so.
So I can see the prominences naked eye.
Yeah,
yeah.
So, right,
That's amazing.
yeah, so that's the beautiful thing with an eclipse is that these are not invisible to your eyes. When you look at the chromosphere, that's invisible, but these are just, the sun is so bright, you can't wash it out. But if you go back and you look at images that were taken of the sun at the beginning of the 20th century, where they were using photographic plates and stuff, and they didn't have H alpha things, they filtered things to get there, but you see lots of prominences
Mhm.
that were captured because they would use a device to block the disc, which is a very dangerous thing. You don't see it anymore.
This prominence at about 5 o'clock here when I didn't see it until we got to totality, and it was just. It was not like, is that a prominence? It was like, it was bam. It was
Right.
bam.
Yeah.
So Jim, if you just point to a filament there. Yeah, right there. That's a filament. And that is the same thing as what you're looking at down below on that prominence, except it's facing you edge on. So as that would rotate around, from here it'll go left to right as the sun moves. That would, how far out that's coming, you can't tell from here. But as it rotates around, if it's still there on rotation, it'll be sticking out as a prominence.
So you could take a time sequence stereo pair of that, would give you a depth perception. As it rotates, you take another image and then you correlate the two together. Anyways, let's not.
Yeah, I've done presentations of that. Maybe we'll do a solar one day, Victor, again.
If it didn't move very much.
But it changes
very much.
very rapid. It's real time. It's crazy how much it can do this.
Next slide. Okay, so this is photosphere that Phil was talking about in white light, so you don't see all that detail. Ron, you want to talk about this? Okay, next slide. So now we're getting close to totality. Jim, anything?
That was, like I said, the camera was doing its thing and I was able to watch that, and that's one of those mental images that I have with the last little bit of sunlight as we head towards C2. It's gorgeous diamond ring. And it's a little hazy there, I think, because of those high clouds that we had.
I didn't experience the diamond ring flash. I was waiting for it because in 2017, I had a 5-inch refractor I was looking at. And when that, and that's the cue as to when you can take your, on the ingress, it's the cue when you can take your glasses off, take the filters off. And it blew me off the eyepiece. It flashed so bright. I was just totally shocked. I was waiting for it again and it didn't seem to have the same intensity for me, but other people experience different things.
Next slide.
That's cool, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's James. I don't think, James, are you on?
He's never on.
Yeah, that's the diamond, definitely a diamond ring there.
Yeah.
Next slide. There's George from Maine. George, are you on? So this was probably the last glimpse of totality before the shadow moved off into Canada and out into the North Atlantic. Next slide.
Actually, it went through Canada first before it got into
And
Maine.
then to Maine.
At that point, yeah. It
So then
went
went to Maine and then back into Canada and then out to the Atlantic.
The
Yeah.
spread was coming up.
What's that?
No, well, I'm sorry.
There's Jerry Doyle. I doubt he's on. He's in the UK. Jerry, are you on? Next slide.
That's
So James Willingham provided that. It was Kendall Russ, who, I don't know if James knows him or what, we provided that. I thought I'd share it. This would be interesting to see how many more of these we see with future eclipses, if there's a lot of, airlines offering flight.
I mean, we definitely, I noticed it in 2017, the jets chasing, it across the country.
You did?
Yeah, they were talking about it on the news, the night before, how, NASA's got a couple planes that they try to stay in the line of totality, traveling as fast as they can. And yeah, I definitely saw them coming as the line was coming.
Delta
I saw
had
them this time too.
Like that was sold out.
Yeah. It sold out like in 3 hours or something.
Wow. Ken, what do you know about the airlines?
Well, I know that we had, Southwest had 5 scheduled to go through the path. But I haven't heard any results from any of those.
Okay.
I know there were some great images from the 2017 of an aircraft that happened to be over Idaho when it happened. But this year, I haven't heard anything. I was curious, because they can't just bend the plane when they want to.
Right.
And it was close to midday throughout the United States. I don't know if the sun would have been easy to see through an aircraft window while it's high up.
Yeah.
And it's only gonna be one half of the plane, window seats, you get to see it.
Yeah, aisle seats for cheaper.
That's the opposite side of the plane.
So my answer is I don't know anything. I haven't
Okay.
heard anything.
The other thing to
I will
remember,
say, there was somebody on a plane for the Aurora Borealis on Friday. I can't remember where she was coming from. She was going to Boston, I think. But in any case, she said she had got to see the Aurora Borealis out her plane window for hours during her flight. And I was like, man, what luck.
All right, next.
the relative velocity is an interesting point to keep in perspective, because even a commercial aircraft is not fast enough. to
Yeah, it's a
maintain.
supersonic.
Now, the Air Force took it upon themselves to fly a fleet of F-15s along the flight path, and they obviously could go at flight level 45 plus, and, they could put pedal to the metal and maintain a long-term endurance run. And their reflection is posted on YouTube, so it's kind of an interesting.
Recording in progress.
Years ago, decades ago, the SST flew under the shadow for as long as it could not flee, but stayed in like 70 or 80 minutes.
Wow.
All right, David, are you on? From Dallas, obviously clouds there.
Oh, it was world.
Joe, are you on? Very interesting
It's
coloration.
like, oh, this blue
Doesn't
coming
say
from,
where.
I'm like, yeah, that's very weird. Green is pretty weird too.
Gene, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. So this is a stack of, I can't remember, but like 85 different exposures. Well, and they're all like 1/500th or so, 1/250th. I can't remember.
What's the star-like object there off to 9 o'clock to the left?
That is a star.
Okay.
You can even tell it's a double star.
15 places. It's like.
Imagine that the star-like object is a star. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for sharing. Next slide. Ian, are you on? I think Ian probably was fighting some clouds there. It kind of looks a little hazy, but nice, very nice image. That's a Seestar image, I believe.
Close to Niagara Falls where it was way on.
That's,
Next slide. Bill?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so that was, you saw me at the binocular several times, and I just took my camera up, like my cell phone up, and snapped that picture. And that's Venus down below. And the thing is, it was way darker than that. The cell phone adjusted to make it brighter, which is a cool thing when you're taking a picture of a family. It sucks when you're doing a eclipse, but that's what it looked like. I mean, to the left is the United States a little bit, and to the right is all Canada. Working out straight.
well, then you got the black dot.
Yeah, and the black dot in the middle, and that was really cool.
Might not watch
And,
it.
and this is towards the end of totality, because I was just enamored before it, and then you can see the clouds that's starting to come in, and they haven't reached the eclipse yet.
No.
They came in right after it ended, and that was nice.
And that made for an interesting picture too, the way the clouds are there.
You got a great sunset effect because of the clouds. Next slide. Atul, are you on? So I can see Venus over here, obviously the sun and moon there, and there's Jupiter. And the clouds, this was taken in near Dayton, Ohio, the National Museum of the Air Force grounds. Kind of the same sky I saw about 30 miles away, except I didn't see these thicker clouds. It was just all high thin clouds. Next slide. Leonardo, are you on? From Elk Ridge, obviously clouds there. Dr. King, are you on? Clouds again from Buffalo, New York. Next slide.
That's cool.
Yes.
Wow.
Nice image. The cloud did make for some interesting images. Next slide. The montage. Stephen, are you on? From Maryland, you can see the clouds in front of the face of the sun in several of those. It still turned out very nice. That's a lot of hard work to put that together. Next slide.
That's even better.
Devin, are you on? So I'm not sure what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
It sounds like he forgot to hit the remote trigger for totality, but I see totality there. Next slide. Other viewer from up in Canada, Dennis Conti. Very nice montage there. Dennis, are you on? Next slide. Richard, are you on?
That's great.
That's very, very cool. See some clouds. But that'd have to be to the west. Probably starting to move in. Next slide. Very nice assemblage there. Ken, you want to talk about that?
It's just shots going to and from, but the diamond rings, you know, like you were saying earlier, it kind of confused me why they weren't on perfectly aligned until I realized I was 20 or 30 miles from the center line, and that's why that happened.
Okay.
Kind of the same as the guy that was pretty much on the edge, and the
Yep.
diamond ring was really close together.
That's so crazy.
And it confused me for a while.
Okay.
So just, to make sure I understand what you're conveying here. If we put a watch next to this, the last picture taken is on the top left? Or the
Yeah, I
first
think that's
picture
right.
taken is on the
The
top?
first picture taken is on the top
Oh,
left.
Okay,
So it's left to right.
Setting.
Right, next.
Wow.
David or Leona, are you on?
That took some time.
Yes, from right here in Maryland. Not sure they got
Amazingly
nice clear
clear.
sky.
Yeah.
Like to hear that story.
that's not possible because we didn't, well, maybe it is, but I have to go back through the pictures I took. I don't recall blue sky.
Yeah, well, that's what Scott just said too, is how does that get so clear?
Background, yeah.
Okay, he could have chipped out the region of interest and
Yeah.
pasted that in there.
Yeah,
Blue sky
maybe just
day.
pasted a little tiny.
Next
What
slide.
am I saying?
Phrase.
All right, so this gets posted. Here's some links for online resources, still images and video images. If you want to add anything to that, send it to me by email, and I'll add links. I'll put out an email that you can respond to. Next slide.
Are they go back to their photos?
What's that?
Or-
Some of them are online photos and some of them are video.
Oh, well, isn't that generous?
Yeah. Sure.
I just wanted to point out, check out the last link and you will find a nice little YouTube and you'll find Jim is featured in it.
Yeah, well, not, I don't like to use the word featured. I'm in it.
Jim, going back to the beginning before I go forward. So I'm really pleased that we got ready to get all these because the morning of our getting ready to go on our trip to Indianapolis, my sister has really bright early in the morning, not bright early, it was not bright, it was dark out, the moon's out. And so I said, oh, come look at the moon. It's really pretty. It was a beautiful crescent moon looking out here in Marysville. And my sister comes, well, that's really pretty, Dana, but I think they're gonna have to cancel the eclipse because there's no moon.
That's a cute story. Next slide. So, okay, next, summarize here, off the floor. So these are the post-eclipse headlines. Sunny in Indiana, where were the crowds? How to tell if you have eye damage.
Can you see this?
We can actually see in this image of the moon, I recognize the corona as being from 2017, but you can see the earth shine in there. Vermont officials estimate 160,000 people drove to the state. And if you look at Vermont, it's just a tiny little corner of the state. That's a lot of people trying to crowd into a very small area, and there's not a lot of good roads up there.
And it was road construction.
And road construction. 3-hour trip became 11-hour marathon.
The Boston
In
Marathon.
certain places. Astronauts were able to see it from the ISS.
What were those red blobs?
What were the red blobs? And what to do with your solar eclipse test? There was an email floating around out there about some options for donating and repurposing them. Next, please. Lessons learned. I'm like Homer Simpson. If there's one thing I don't want to learn, that's a lesson. So early reservations might pay off. I didn't hear any, 2017, there was discussion about people having reservations canceled when people with assets out there realized that they were worth a lot more than what they were when they booked the early ones. And nothing like that this time. Weather, climate is something to consider, but be flexible on eclipse day. Traffic, maybe consider staying in place an extra day if you're viewing site or camping or whatever, instead of trying to get back into traffic. Eclipse, shades and eye safety. Again, encouraging HAL members to be eye safety advocates. Recommend projection methods to people that don't have classes. One person uncovered that, somebody was about to put on eye shades and put binoculars up in front of them.
Oh.
And so talk to people about how they plan to observe, and if you see something that you know is unsafe, call it out. Next slide.
And if you have extra glasses, pass them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, that was just dumb luck that all three of you had passports. And we're broken down on the center line.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Outreach opportunities, we didn't hear as much about it this time as I did in 2017, but big organized events, if you had a telescope to set up and share views, that kind of got in free and got good places to set up. Photography, again, don't put your experience at risk, but if you must, study, plan, and practice. And optics, view unfiltered at totality only. Don't be at the eyepiece as third contact approaches. As like Phil said, it'll blow you off your telescope. Next slide, please. Differences, cooler weather than the one in 2017, and the cool down was more noticeable. More travelers, more submitters than we had in 2017. Like Phil said, we have twice as many members. More reports of seeing prominences with the unaided eye. So there was that one that was, almost couldn't stop staring at it myself. Use of smartphone apps, a little image of one over there. Arrival of the Seestar, something different and new. And this time solar eclipse glasses were widely available. And it felt like to me that lessons learned from 2017 were applied in 2024. So that's good. Next. Next eclipse coming up, 2026, goes through northern Spain, across the Atlantic and off the coast of Iceland. The weather projection, the climate says that Iceland is more likely to be clouded than Spain. But in Spain, the eclipse is going to start very close to the horizon. Next slide. Thanks. And just looking ahead for the US, March 2033 across Alaska, 2044 across the northern tier through Canada.
It's like, that's on the end of the track or the beginning, so it's gonna be a very low sun.
Yeah, I think you're right. 2045, one that kind of tracks parallel to the 2017 eclipse. And even projecting out the 2052, 2064, 2071. I don't think I'll be here, but the rest of them.
We have planned a HAL party.
Next slide.
So the width of the track is related to just the geometry of
Yeah,
where
so where the sun and the moon are in their orbits, or the sun and the earth are in their orbits.
Perigee,
And I learned that the eclipses have families.
Yes, Sarah.
So the one that's coming in 2045, the totality time is 7 minutes.
Wow.
Off the coast below Florida.
Oh, yeah.
That's the figure because it's such a wide path.
Mental health level one.
About what you just said, and I've heard this a lot too, about the when it goes over staying, and that's gonna be very low. What does that mean exactly? Like, so when you're observing, it's like, just not.
Sunset.
Oh,
So
elevation angle of the sun.
you need to have nothing in the way.
Yeah. Uninstructed right.
You take a cruise. I think they already are like arranging solar eclipses.
So you gotta tell you, the colors could be spectacular because, just the same reason you have an orange and red sun, because the atmosphere is gonna be filtering out all those high frequency, or all those, higher short wavelengths. The purples and blues are gonna be gone at that, at real low. It could be spectacular, orange, red eclipse.
Is that a typo on your slide? Next eclipse, March 30th, 2033?
Yeah,
In Alaska.
Up in Alaska.
Up in Alaska.
Oh, all right.
Not that's in the mainland, it's, well,
Well,
44,
I guess it's.
barely.
Barely.
Good job.
It's cold too, March 30th in Alaska.
Right.
It's one of the roads. will be-
And just a couple of conclusions that we as a group are a very adventurous bunch. Some of us are incredibly. And the effort to get to totality is worth it. And then there's James Willingham's double Bailey's feeds.
Just said the effort is totally worth it.
Totality work.
So if there's any questions or comments for me, I pretty much said it.
No, awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we are getting close to running out of time. Wayne, how do you think about, what do you think about deferring these?
We can save it for next month.
Okay, let's do that. Because there's 15 minutes left, and I'd like to kibitz and talk as we shut down here, and don't want to cause the.
Sure, I'm happy. I'm happy. No explanation needed.
Okay. So just have a couple of these. Harini, are you on? So Harini, Arjun's younger sister, is.
I'm here.
Would you like to tell us about these photos?
Yes. So I took this in my new telescope, the Seestar S50. So I took the image of the sun, and then the galaxy I took is M81. The sub exposures were 10 seconds. And then the actual exposure for the M81 was 25 minutes.
And where were you when you took the M81 photo?
Oh, I was at home, and I was out in front of my house.
So right here in Ellicott City then.
Yes.
Awesome.
Rainey, tell Ray how old you are.
I'm 9.
Nice.
9 point what?
9 years.
Well, that's fantastic. And I look forward to seeing more of your work as we go on. That's good. Congratulations on you got some nice sunspots there too.
Thank you.
Thank you for submitting. And then I just figured we'd have to have one of these, at least one of these, given the current events. I don't think he's on. This is James Willingham.
And where did he take that?
So he went
Cumberland?
went to Western Maryland.
Frostburg.
Howard County.
So he went to Frostburg, and then on his way back, he stopped at the Howard County Fairgrounds. And I don't remember. So you guys remember which one is which? This is the fairgrounds, and then I think this one is from Frostburg. So yeah, pretty amazing. I had somebody last night showing me they were at a music festival in North Carolina, and they just took their cell phone and put it up. They got some amazing stuff like this.
Yeah, someone got a shot from a plane over the Gulf of Mexico.
Ooh.
Could see them.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a long way.
Well, maybe we'll have another when people get a chance to process them, we'll have another session dedicated to the aurora.
It was surprising to hear, most people's phones took better pictures, or they were actually able to see it better, once they took a picture with their phone.
Yeah,
it's 'cause
yeah,
the-
yeah.
The cones and rods in your eye are nothing compared to today's technology. When my son took pictures of the aurora borealis in a MIT lab in the Arctic Circle, he thought that it just all looked white to him when he was seeing it. He just kept snapping and snapping, and through the camera, you could see beautiful colors.
Yeah.
So, I thought there was something wrong with his eyes. He was 15 at the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with your eyes, but no, that actually
I
is.
just love the fact that the average person now has a phone that is that good.
Yeah, yeah.
But the commentary on that is that don't forget what the phone does is accentuate colors that don't exist.
Right.
Through the human sense.
But they're pretty.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy seeing them on my phone, just go dang.
Okay, well, that's all we have for this month. I'm gonna stop the recording and we have a few minutes left here. Maybe we can just still talk a little bit. And a thank you to everybody who came here tonight and to everybody that was online too. Thanks for being part of HAL.
Thank you. It's a nice piece of